Today, let's talk about why you choosing yourself as an INFJ will annoy people. And it will annoy people even more because you're an INFJ. So if an ISTJ chooses themselves, if an ESTJ chooses themselves, it most likely won't annoy or trigger people as much as if you as an INFJ choose yourself. That is just something we have to accept. Because the moment you accept this, you're not going to fight against it. If you take it as a given that this is how the world works, and we can definitely talk about why this is happening, because I think like once you have an understanding of it, it will help you to, accept it and then move on. But to really not get stuck in the place of why is this way and question it and trying to understand it, but really taking it a step further, as in, okay, let's take this information as a given and see how I can work with that in the real world. How am I going to do all the things that I want to do? How I'm going to lean into choosing myself, knowing that will annoy people, knowing that it will make people uncomfortable, and know that this is part of my journey. And through that, actually come to a place where you honestly feel at peace, where you don't recognize that you trigger people because they're just so far away from you, because they just don't align with how you live your life. Before we get started, I want to remind you, if you want to take it to the next level, if you want to tap into your INFJ epic life, if you want my guidance in this, then work with me one-on-one. If you want to check out the audio guide, if you want to look into free material, everything that you might want to look into, you can find in the links in the description. The INFJ's true happiness is very pure, meaning the way we lean into happiness or the way we seek happiness is really based on an intrinsic and authentic and real tangible happiness that is independent of how other people view us, of what kind of material possessions we have, of our status in society, like all of that. We know that there is a mindset that we can adapt that will help us to find that happiness, that is really allowing not only ourselves to be happy, but also others. And this is how we very often get into a conflict, because it feels like the moment I choose what makes me happy, it will trigger people, it will annoy them. And the reason for this is that we really are not in need of that validation. We want it. Sometimes we want to be understood and appreciated for who we are, but we're not looking for those external factors to make us feel happy or to give us some kind of illusion of that we've achieved something. Because for us, it's crystal clear that it is an illusion. A lot of it has to do with the fact that we're introverted intuitives first, that we neglect our extroverted sensing. So everything that has to do with what we can achieve in the real world feels fake. It doesn't feel like it is the real thing. And so when people look at us and don't recognize that part in ourselves that they have just accepted within themselves and, within the people around them, they get really triggered. They get really suspicious. They don't know what's going on. So we're very often, not only misunderstood, but also underestimated. And most of it, people actually think that there's something wrong with us, that we are making ourselves out to be the weird one out. And it makes people so uncomfortable that they lash out, that they go towards us as like the perfect person who can, receive all their negative emotions. And so it becomes like this vicious cycle of people are like acting like this towards you, and you don't know why, and you're trying to explain yourself, and you only have good intentions. And sometimes it feels like, so I have to become a hard person. I have to give up my essence. I have to pretend to care about things that I don't. And no, of course, that is not the solution. But know that people get triggered because you have something that they want. And the thing that they want that you have, and every personality has something that another one might want to have. But the thing that we as INFJs possess is the ability to create happiness and peace from an internal world that doesn't need others. And many people would like to have that, because they feel like they are at the mercy of what society says they should be, of what society makes them out to be, of what is expected of them, and so on. And if we really go to our core, then that is exactly who we are, that we have this essence that is independent. And the more we lean into it because we want to connect with people on an authentic level, the more this part of ourselves comes out. This level of, I'm not judging you based on a social status. I'm not basing you on what I could gain from you. I just see you as somebody who's having a spiritual human experience just like me, and we're two souls meeting. That's how we very often see the world. And we understand on a psychological level, yes, those are the rules in the real world. And, if I wanted to play them, that's how I would position myself. But we also know that's not who we truly are. And so if you say, I'm going to step out of the game, I'm not in need of likes, I'm not in need of being perceived as super strong or super popular or whatever it may be. I'm good with how I am and who I am. When we lean into this, people make us feel like we're doing something wrong. And they're doing this not because we're bad people, not because we're doing something wrong, but also not because they're bad people. Most of the time, it is because we are allowing something in ourselves that they're not allowing themselves, and they judge themselves for those parts of themselves that are not acceptable. So they have been conditioned, they have conditioned themselves as well to believe those lies of, the way I truly am is not what's going to get me ahead in society. It's not what's going to make me stand out. And yes, part of them might need social, connection a little bit more than us. But we, on the other hand, also are in need of something that other people might not be in need of. So we, for example, need a lot of space. We need a lot of independence. We need a lot of the ability of being who we are and not being questioned of it, or, being put into a box, or people trying to change us the way they want us to be. Those are our needs. And I believe this is something that we need in many ways more than even other people. Like, people can live with other people trying to mold them and actually comply to that. For us, it's not that way. So it's not that I think that we need less than other people. We just need different things. And this one thing that we need that we very often neglect is the exact same thing that will remind other people that they could integrate more of who they are. Because we all are experiencing life differently. Not just other types, but every INFJ. Every single person experiences life in a different way based on what we've experienced, based on, how we're set up and all of that. And so we can't really make another person understand where we're coming from. The best way we can make that happen is by, stating what we want most in life. And what we want most in life, if we have to give up all the other stuff, it's really being as authentically ourselves as possible, being allowed to dream freely, being allowed to enjoy life, being allowed to be at peace, and not being told that we're not allowed to be that way. And so many people want that in themselves as well, but don't feel like they're allowed to. And if they're judging this part about themselves so critically, if they feel like this is something they have to suppress, that if they feel that is a weakness, then they automatically are going to project it onto you as well. And we are a mirror in that sense. We're showing up as authentically as we possibly can. And in this kind of way that really allows other people to be themselves as well. And so many INFJs have gone through life asking themselves the question of, why me? Why am I always being picked on? Why is it that when I show up and I want honest connection, people react this way towards me? And the reason is very simple. You are daring to be something that they are not allowing themselves yet. And so this dynamic will continue as long as you make it a negotiable, as long as you're not 100% all in. It's this decision of saying, I'm willing to get rejected. I'm willing to completely rebel against everything that I'm supposed to be in order to make sure that I can be as much of myself as I possibly can at this moment. Because that is a very brave thing to do. What we very often don't do, though, is that we actually put ourselves out there while being this way. We feel like I am all that I can be and I really choose me, but people are not going to get it, so I'm not going to even try. And that's how we get into the hermit mode for too long. That's how we feel disconnected, because we do need the connection. We do need to be able to see that we're part of something bigger. We do need to contribute and see that who we are is bringing value to others. And that can only happen if we stick to that. So every single time you're in those in-between phases where you don't want to rock the boat, when you don't want to trigger people, just know that you're probably giving up a part of you. That does not mean that we can't trigger people because we did things that were just not nice. Of course we can. Like, all of us have done this. This is a human behavior. Yes, we've triggered people by being too selfish or by doing something that doesn't really make sense. But all of those aspects where we feel like, if I am choosing what is intrinsically best for me, and even if I don't know that this current emotion is like the best for me, but it's part of the journey that I need, then it cannot by definition be my responsibility how another person feels about it. What I mean by this is the following. If you have allowed another person too close to you and you have abandoned your boundaries, you haven't stood up for yourself yet, you haven't shown that person where you're very sensitive, what is really important to you, how much space you need, all of that. Very often, because we're not even aware of it ourselves, right? We want to absorb the other person. It's super interesting, it's super exciting, and we forget that in the process we're giving up what we want now, which is, the excitement, the colors, the, understanding of things. We're giving up what we want now for what we want most, and what we want most is inner peace. Like, I want to have all the other things, but at the end of the day, this is the core of it. I want inner peace. I want to feel like I'm not hurting anybody. I want to feel like nobody's hurting me. I want to create long-lasting relationships that are based on a mutual understanding. And through that, we can really create long-lasting, loyalties between us, because there is not something that is based on, I have to pretend to be somebody that I'm not. I'm making compromises that I just can't make forever. And the interesting part is that once you start leaning into this, you will have better relationships. It's really surprising because I never expected this. So just know if you're on the verge of making that jump, and that jump is scary. I don't think like so many INFJs have done that jump. I don't know if I would have ever made that jump if I wasn't really forced to. And I'm also not that naive to think that I've done it all the way. But I know that I've done a big jump. I had to go really deep inside of myself and give up so much that I had built, and this character that I have refined, that I was showing to the outside, that was actually a mask. It wasn't all that I was, because I also have parts of me that care about my well-being and about being a conqueror in my own world, and just emotions that are not, what another person would want me to be. And so I know what it feels like to have to make that choice. But it's always, always worth it, because that is something that is maintainable. It's something that you feel like, if I show up the way I am, maybe I will repel all people, because that's how it felt like. For me, I felt like nobody's ever going to be able to connect with me ever again. And in some case, that is even true. First off, it was obvious from the get-go. Like, when you choose yourself, you create your own world. And nobody can really connect with you in your own world, because it's your world. People can make compromises and they can understand you, but there's always going to be a space that you take up around you. If I would have to describe it in a metaphorical sense, it would feel like before I was making myself as small as possible so the people around me could express themselves in any kind of way that they see fit, even in ways that weren't in alignment with how they felt, even in ways that showed their vulnerabilities, that showed their pain, and also in ways that made me feel bad about who I was. And it was very crystal clear that the moment I would take up more space, I would inevitably push them out. I would take something away from them. But the space that they were taking up in your life is not something that is theirs. This is yours. If people get triggered by this, and of course they will, because think about it, we have two main ways of operating in the world. We can either make ourselves small, allowing the other person to be as big as possible by making space for them, right? So they feel like I don't have to pretend I'm somebody else, or I can allow all of my emotions and all of my experience around, me or you as an INFJ. So they feel like, oh, now I can breathe a little bit more. And then you come along and you say, no, I'm taking my space back. What do they have to do? They have to go back inside. They have to repress who they are. But we are not the reason why they're repressing themselves. We are the reason that for a while around us, they could breathe a little bit more. And that's how often we feel like we're being valuable to other people, by allowing them to breathe a little bit more. But that is not a solution, because we're giving up who we are in order to make them a little bit more comfortable. And we also have to remember that that person is acting from a way of, if I choose myself, I'm doing something wrong. So if you make more space for them, they're not going to appreciate that. They're going to want to take up even more space, because the only person who can really give them the space that they need is themselves. They have to find a different way of connecting with the world, of sharing their truth, their beliefs, their values, and addressing the world in a different way. So they feel like they can be all that they can be. And that is what we want to achieve, right? We want people to feel this way. That is in so many ways one of our core beliefs, that everybody's allowed to feel this way and that we're not taking anything away from each other. But when you're making yourself small and then you're starting to take up a little bit more space, you're going to get that reaction from other people. You're going to get the reaction of, you're doing something wrong. You're doing something that is not allowed. You're, wrong, weird, whatever it may be. Know that this, of course, is a reflection of how they feel about them choosing themselves. But that is not a reason to allow them to continue with this self-sabotaging behavior, but also with sabotaging behavior towards you and towards others. Because if they act like this towards you, on some level, they're also acting this way towards other people. Maybe not that extremely, but yeah, a person who's not in alignment with who they're meant to be is always going to hurt oneself and others. And we're no exception of that. Me making myself small, I have hurt people not recognizing it. Because when you are making yourself small as an INFJ, you are inevitably keeping count of, oh, I'm sacrificing so much for you. And so I expect something in return. I expect your loyalty. I expect you, thinking about me. Whatever it may be, we're not doing things out of, I feel great and now I'm giving because my cup of energy is overflowing. So once we understand that this is in so many cases the reason why people act this way, we can understand what is our responsibility and what is theirs. We cannot save people. We cannot heal them. What we can do is we can show up as the healed version of ourselves and inspire people through that to choose their healed version as well. But very often we don't do that step because it's super scary. But that is the thing that's going to show other people of what we're really capable of. That's going to prove to ourselves the fighter that we actually are. If we're willing to choose the truth that is uncomfortable, that's going to make us disconnect from people. You're going to take up more space. You're not going to feel people so closely like you used to before, but you will feel yourself more. You will allow yourself to show up like this through all your life with everybody you come into contact with. And then it's on them to decide, do I stay in the presence of that INFJ? How much can I stay in their presence without it triggering me too much? And do I even want to? Some people don't want to see that part. They don't want to see that reflected. And that's okay. Like, that's their journey. It's not on us to make those choices for others, but it's on us to make that choice for ourselves. And so when you know that this is what's going to happen, when this is not something you fight, when you know that this is how it's supposed to be, that the process of triggering people to such an extent that you don't even feel that you're triggering them because they, just stay away from you altogether. And the people who can stay in your presence get attracted to you. And by the way, this is not just INFJs. This is just people who are in alignment with themselves. And those can be completely different types. Those can be types like, an ISTJ or an ESTJ or whatever kind of type you come in contact with. A person who is in alignment with who they are going to be okay with you being in alignment with who you are. And it's also not an all or nothing thing either. People will come closer to you when they see your own conviction for yourself without you trying to convince others of it. You will gather such an internal strength that people will get attracted to. So much so that they would want your input, that they would want you to give your opinion, but let them ask for it. Like, really allow people to go through their journey themselves, because you as an INFJ have a lot to work through yourself. I remember this vividly, how I felt like, oh, I have to save that person. And I was completely neglecting how much saving I needed, how little I was taking care of myself. And I also learned that the best way to help others is to actually choose my happiness, knowing that just because I trigger people, I'm still acting from a place of love. And that I know that it's part of the process, that people have to feel their own pain and get triggered in order to work through some kind of behaviors and value systems that they have adapted that isn't really them. But if they take it on, if they don't take it on, in what timeline they take it on, is not on us to decide. So yes, you choosing you will trigger people. It will annoy people. But you will only experience this in this in-between state when you're questioning yourself or you back off. And once you've made that decision and I'm never backing off from being that version of myself, everybody who comes closer to me than, a person that I have a superficial small talk with, they have to see that part of me. And they can either stay in that and enjoy that and grow from that, or, they can find somebody else and other people that they can mesh with. That is all fine. But it all starts with us. So don't shy away from it. Don't ask yourself why this is happening and I wish it would be different. See it as part of the journey and as part of, who we can be in this world. Yes, it's a little bit more of a difficult path in general, but there's so much potential there. So let's be the ones who tap into that potential first before we're trying to convince people to tap into their potential. Be an inspiration, and it will allow people much easier to choose what is best for them as well. Remember, if you want my personal help in taking the next steps in your INFJ epic life, then work with me one-on-one. You can also get the audio guide for working through a lot of things by yourself wherever you are. And we also offer a lot of other material. So everything you need to know in order to take the next step, you can find in the links in the description. And if you want to watch another video now that is in alignment with today's topic, then check out the video you see on the screen right now. I see you in the next one. Bye, guys.